what do you love doing? Right? Like, what are you proficient at and love doing? Keep doing that because that's what's going to continue to make you want to grow and excel and just put everything into this business.
What's up, friends? Welcome to the RE Junkies podcast, where we supply your regular dose of all things real estate. Make sure you're the first to get your dose of the RE Junkies podcast by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube. I'm Brooks O'Hearn, joined by my co host, Kaiten Murphy, and today we have our good friend, John Blackburn. John, how are you?
What's going on, man? Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
For those of you who can't see John, he's wearing a hat that says rinse do.
There you go. Is that better?
So you know it's
Yes.
going to be a great episode.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. And for those of you that also can't see John, I love to compare him to Caton's husband Joe, and you two have the same mannerisms. You look like long lost brothers, and it is absolutely hilarious when we first watched you two interact when you guys first met out in San Diego last year. So
Yeah, I think we were
um,
wearing the same jeans and shoes as well, too. I think
And you
we
guys
literally,
have the same pose too. We look over and you both are just standing there and we're like, you're kidding me.
posing on the pier, yes. And they both have very analytical brains. We love you both, honestly. It's the best. So, anyway, back to some real estate stuff. So, by the way, for anyone listening here, obviously we know John very well, but let's talk about his real estate career for a little bit. So, he's a 17-year veteran of real estate investing and still proud to say that he still has all his hair, although for those of you watching, the rents due hat is covering that. His craft
still.
is his craft is buying long-term rentals and creating financial independence for himself and his family. He is also committed to helping 100,000 people find their own version of financial independence through coaching and training them how to successfully invest in real estate properties. Excuse me. And John always says it's not about the destination, it's about the enjoyment of the journey. And I could not think of anything more applicable for you, John, in the near decade that I've known you. And he is absolutely 100% dedicated to having fun along the way. We might touch on your pilot's license and we might touch on some of your other adventures that you're in today. But for now, let's talk about anything I missed there on your introduction, or anything you would like to share with the listeners about how you got in real estate. Let's start there.
No, you nailed it. I'm actually going to bring you places so you can just do that intro for me for whatever I'm doing. But
Love it.
my biggest focus is long-term wealth. I think you know I flip houses, I do wholesaling, I do all those things, but my biggest focus always has been long-term wealth because I am a true believer that real estate is a catalyst or a vehicle that will allow you to live the life that you want, right? It doesn't have to be your passion. It doesn't have to be something that you wake up and like, you know, live, breathe, eat, drink, on a daily basis. But it is a vehicle that can most quickly get you and be a support system to what you ultimately want to do. And that's how I view real estate.
I love it. I love it. And what is it specifically about long-term wealth? Because when we first met, like I said, a decade ago, um, you were still involved in long-term wealth and passive income rental properties there, with another company. Now you're out on your own doing it for yourself and providing it very directly to others. But what's it been? What was always the draw of that to you?
I think I grew up in a household where saving money or investing money was kind of like always talked about. My dad extraordinarily frugal and cheap, and my mom and dad would always jokingly argue about who's spending what money, who's using whose credit card. And I was just kind of like always remember my dad saving and saving and saving. And I think that was kind of just bred into me since the day I was born, and I never really kind of knew what avenue that I wanted to invest in until I learned about real estate when I was 20 years old. And I was like, oh my God, like, and as a young 20-year-old, right, you're trying to prove your dad wrong. Like, you know what, I'm so much smarter than you. And, you usually have to fall on your face 5 or 6 times before you learn how to do it the right way. But, it was a little bit of that and a little bit of knowing that I, had that investing gene, if you will, and just ran with it, just because some friends introduced me to real estate, and it's been fun ever since.
I love it. I love it. Now you've got your main operation is in Connecticut, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then you live in sunny San Diego.
Yep.
So for those of you listening at home, that's why he's got the palm tree in the back of his picture right now.
Yep.
And big lover of the beach, you, your wife, and your dog, big lovers of the beach. And it's impressive that your operation is all the way out in Connecticut. And also, remind me again, you're in a new market now recently, right?
Yeah, so I've been taking the last couple years to try to figure out, how can I continue to focus heavily on buying rental properties, right? So what I've done is just narrowed into a market where I'm not going to do flipping, I'm not going to do anything but buy rental properties. So right now we're heavily investing in Little Rock, Arkansas, to just buy those long-term rentals.
I love it. I love it. So you're in San Diego. You've got teams in both markets, up
Yep.
in Connecticut and then Little Rock, Arkansas, and just living the dream, man. I love it. So, also, like I said earlier, flying your plane back and forth.
Yeah.
Not yet to Little Rock and Connecticut,
Not
right?
yet to Little
But
Rock, yeah, or
little
Connecticut.
shorter trips.
Yeah,
John,
yeah.
how did you identify Little Rock?
So I have a set of, as you talked about earlier, I'm pretty analytical, right? So I have a set of metrics. There's 6 specific metrics that I follow, and I'll find a state and then look at the cities within inside of that state and see if they meet those metrics, and if they do, then they kind of go on the list, right? And then from there, I'll do a little bit deeper research in terms of what I personally like, as long as they meet those initial metrics, and go from there.
Are you
I
willing to
love it.
share a couple of those metrics with us?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So, the first thing that I look at before I even look at a city is that state investor friendly or not, right? Are the laws, leaning towards me, or the renter that lives in the home? From there, as we start to look at the cities, now I'm going to start to look at things like GMP, which is gross metro product, right? Is the city growing in terms of production, right? Or is it shrinking, right? And then I'm looking at socioeconomic anchors. What types of jobs are there? Are they jobs that are very economic? The health of the economic system, like for example, take Orlando, Florida, right? Why does everybody go to Orlando, Florida? For vacation. Why does everybody go
Mhm.
to Las Vegas? To gamble, right? When people start losing jobs or things start to tighten, what happens? People don't go on vacation anymore,
Mhm.
right? So I want jobs that are focused on, you know, the healthcare, transportation, manufacturing, things of that nature. So looking at job production, and then other smaller things like housing affordability index, right? How affordable is it for someone to live in that city, right? Can they pay rent? Can they sustain increases in rents and still be able to send their kids to summer camp and go out and date night and just live life in those cities? So things like that are really what play into my decision a lot.
Yeah. I love that. I love how in depth. I mean, I think that every investor kind of has their own process that they go through. But when I talk to some investors who want to identify a new market, it certainly has not been that in depth. So
Yeah.
it's nice to hear some of those anchors that someone can take and apply to identifying a new market.
Yeah, and one of the cool things, right, is people might not even think about it, but Little Rock is a state capital, right? And it's very rare you have the opportunity to find like financial metrics that align with a state capital, because what city gets all the money, right, when it gets dumped into a state, right? The state capital, right?
The
Where are all
capital.
the government jobs, which are the most like secure jobs in the country? The state capital, right? So things like that, sometimes when you think about it, or like it's brought to your attention, you're kind of like, oh wow, that's a no-brainer, right? So yeah.
You mean to tell me that politicians are just a little selfish and they
Yeah, slightly.
leave the money in the city that they have to live in? I'm
I
working.
know, right? It's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, insane. So, for those of you guys listening at home, we want to plug John's social media for a second. Connect with John on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We're going to have the links in the show notes. And especially if you have interest in building generational wealth, John has a Facebook group that will be in the notes. It's a fully free Facebook group, and he is dropping knowledge in there every single day. And I'm really excited now that we're heading into fall because, John, every single Tuesday when you go live, I am usually on the golf course. And so I
Hey,
haven't been able to listen live. So I'm excited to start catching your trainings live instead of on the replay. So it's great stuff every single week, and you breaking down all kinds of things for investors to learn and know. And I know a lot of people they hear coaching and teaching, and they all of a sudden get real defensive. But the stuff you're dropping on all your platforms is super informative, and honestly, I'm impressed. So I have to plug that for you, and make sure that everyone listening goes and connects with John in the show notes. John, I want to take you now to a spot that we like to call the pit or the low point. And we affectionately stole this term from your wife and her trainings.
yep.
So I want you to take us through a low point in your entrepreneurial journey and something that really got you to a place that changed your trajectory coming out.
Yeah. So I liken this to going back to my first ever real estate deal from a retail flip standpoint. So I started my real estate career as most people do as a retail real estate agent, right? Driving Miss Daisy around on Sunday, all the showings and all that fun stuff. And finally I got convinced that, hey, being a real estate investor is way better than driving people around on Sunday and doing open houses. So I bought my first flip. I bought it off auction.com. Can you imagine? I like remember this like it was yesterday, right? And, in my mind, I was like, this is the best thing ever. I had a hard money lender. I'm paying like 14% and 4 points, it was horrendous, right? But I bought in this deal. It was in one of the nicest parts of town. Great neighborhood, great school district. Every house in that area was, they fly off the shelf because they only were inherited, right? They never actually were on the market. So I was feeling super confident about this deal. And to make a long story short, right, the project took like 3 months longer than it should because it was over the winter and Connecticut winters. I don't know if you guys know what those look like, but they're pretty awful. We couldn't
I
get
can imagine.
product. Yeah, we couldn't get product to the house for like a month. And then once it did hit the market, it sat on the market for an extra 2 or 3 months. And the moral of the story is that I lost $17,000 on my very first deal, right? And it was one of those moments where $17,000 at that point was not gonna kill me. Thank God, right? Like, did it hurt? Yeah. Does anyone like losing $17,000? No, but I wasn't gonna be eating ramen for the next 6 months because of that situation. With that being said, it really made me take a step back and because I was cocky, right? I had bought in a lot of rental properties. I felt like I knew real estate, right? And then I tried this whole buy, fix, and flip and sell it on the retail market thing. And I realized that what I look for in rental properties was completely different than what people actually look for when they're flipping houses, right? This house had the smallest lot in town, right? This house didn't have air conditioning, which every other house had air conditioning, right? I just painted the cabinets and didn't update all the cabinets, right, with brand new counters. So like these things that I wasn't thinking about as a rental investor, right, were coming back to bite me right in the butt when it came to doing retail flips. But the upside is I'm a pretty competitive person, so that really pissed me off. I was like, Oh no, I'm not going to do one deal, and my history or my story about doing retail flips is going to be a $17,000 loss, right? So I just had to take some time, got some coaching, got some help from other investors to kind of relearn, what I needed to look at from a retail purchase standpoint, and have ultimately had some success. But the pit was the loss, right? And what got me out of that pit, it's going to be different for everyone. For me, it's my competitiveness, right? When you put my back against the wall, there's only one option for me, and that's to figure a way out, right? Versus just say, that's it, that was a good shot. So for me, it's that mentality, right? That's the journey is going to have some bumps, it's going to have some bruises, you're going to take licks, but at the end of the day, if you keep trying, you're going to come out on top. And that was not the only time that I've lost money. So it's happened before. It's happened recently, actually, and I'm sure it'll happen again in the future at some point. It's just all part of the game.
Absolutely. Well, we love an honest real estate investor who can tell us that they lost money on their first deal and then have lost money on some deals since, because it does happen to all of us, like you said.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, I had to laugh inside when you talked about your cockiness and your competitiveness, because literally all I could think about is when you told us a story about how you and your wife were first met, and how you were so persistent that you ended up actually getting a date from her. Story for another time, but all I could think about when you were talking about that was that story. So you knew you're cocky, you knew you're competitive. Obviously you've had to dig deep over the years, but when you hit that low point or other low points, what are some of the things that you've learned about yourself, that maybe you didn't know going into this business?
Yeah, and I think as an entrepreneur, we have low spots like every week, right? Where we have that moment where we're thinking to ourselves, like, why am I even doing this? Like, shouldn't I just go get a 9 to 5? Like, there's so much riding on all of this, that is it really worth all the stress? One of the biggest things that I've learned about myself is paying attention to that voice, right? Now, not giving that voice merit, but paying attention to it. Like, oh, wow, like I'm having these thoughts at the moment. Like, this probably means that stress is at a super high level, right? Take a minute to figure out what are causing these stressors, right? Is it one thing? Is it multiple things? Is it, maybe this text message I haven't responded to in 6 weeks, right? And yeah, right. And just take time to be with it, right? And I always know that, within 24 hours, most of the time that I've moved past those worries, or those scaries, if you will, and put myself in a position where, hey, now we can just move forward with success. But yeah, I mean, as an entrepreneur, you just have to know you're going to run into those moments. Even if there's nothing to freak out about, your mind just has those moments where, like, why are we doing this, man? Like, there seems to be a lot of risk for maybe some reward, right? And just allowing yourself to know you're going to have those feelings, recognize them, don't give them merit, but try to help understand why you're feeling them, and just sleep on it, right? Come out the other side knowing in 24 hours that you're going to feel right as rain, and be making better decisions.
I love it. I love it. That for knowing you as an AD, that makes my heart happy. As a fellow
Yeah.
AD, that you and I can acknowledge feelings. That's okay.
Yeah, man, it took a
Um,
Nice.
long time to learn how to feel,
yeah,
that's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Hey, as
So cool.
young male entrepreneurs, that's how it happens, right?
Yeah,
We put some shit in a box and pretend it doesn't exist, because that's what we think we got to do as
it's
entrepreneurs.
way easier that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Until that box opens itself randomly, and then you're like, "Oh shit, what's this?"
Yeah, yeah.
So, if I remember right, you and Christy, your wife, and then your father-in-law is
Hmm.
also in the company. And the
Yep.
three of you were working pretty. You were all wearing the technician role. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah.
And so through the years, now Christy has separated off of the day to day within the business. Obviously, still very
Hmm.
much an owner and very much in the company. But now it's you and your father in law that are running the company pretty much day to day. And obviously, you guys have built quite a team out below you. Take us through some learning lessons that you had to go through and some things you wish you could have accelerated the curve on when you went from the three of you being in the business, doing all the stuff to now growing a team and expanding?
Yeah, I think the one of my biggest learning lessons, and I'm continuing to have it as as I kind of do other things entrepreneurial wise, is focus, right? And what I mean by that, for the longest time, this retail, renovation business and wholesale business in Connecticut was really just kind of a side hustle, right? We did it as a side hustle, just to help support my father-in-law because he wanted to do something other than just be a regular contractor. And it was easy to have boots on the ground in a market where we could 100% fully trust him. And then over time, like, we saw growth, but we didn't see growth in a way that we really felt was made it worth our financial time. And what I learned over those years of kind of making it a side hustle is, yes, the system was functioning, but it was not functioning nearly as well as it could because I didn't give it 100% of my focus, right? And about 2, 3 years ago, I said, hey, you know what? Like, I'm just going to go all in on this thing. Let's put some focus into it for 6 or 8 months and see what happens, right? And really kind of block out the noise. And what transpired was we're going from doing 1 to 2 deals a month or 1 to 2 deals every 2 months to 8 to 10 deals a month, right? Instantly, like almost like in within 90 days, right? And it was just because I blocked out all the noise and got really focused on doing one thing, and that was making sure the business was operating its highest and best, and also taking ourselves out of the technician role, right? Bringing in a full-time acquisitions manager, bringing in a full-time TC, hiring VAs for the $4, $5, $6 an hour jobs that none of us needed to do. So for me, it's always been, as entrepreneurs, I think we can do a lot of things, right, at one time, right? That's what makes us an entrepreneur. And when we start to feel that different things are struggling, right, I always pose the question to myself, and I encourage you to, is like, how much time am I really giving that thing? And would it be successful if I just wasn't half-assing it, right? Because that's usually what happens is we're like, oh, it's not where that business isn't working. Oh, it's getting an hour and a half a week of your time, right? So it's probably not going to be successful, right?
Yeah. You and I both know from coaching numerous students over the years, it that is one of the biggest questions, right? How much time are you really putting into it?
Yep.
Um, for for a let's chunk down a little bit on the identifying the places within the business that you could hire yourself out of a job.
Hmm.
Um, what did that process look like? And then talk us through some specifics on how you guys finally came to, again, which positions to hire yourself out of a job.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, as we talked about earlier, I'm all about the journey, right? Enjoying the journey. Because if you're not having fun, it's completely pointless in my mind.
Yep.
That's my own personal opinion. So there's a big difference between what you're good at and what you love to do, right? I'm really good at a lot of things that I really don't like to do just because I've had to become good at it, right? Like, yeah, I am really good at folding clothes, but I hate doing laundry, right? So, like, let's not do that, right? So, I always tell any other entrepreneur or, anyone I'm having this conversation with is like, what do you love doing? Right? Like, what are you proficient at and love doing? Keep doing that because that's what's going to continue to make you want to grow and excel and just put everything into this business, right? And the things that you're good at but just don't light you up, just because you're good at it doesn't mean you need to do it, right? Like, that's probably the worst reason why an entrepreneur should continue to do something, is just because they're good at it, because that's just going to eat you in from the inside out and just burn you out, and you're going to just trail off, and it's not going to be pretty. So pick what you love and what really excites you and what wakes you up in the morning, and pursue that. Like, for me, I love raising money. I love funding deals. Those are things that I just are so much fun to me. I like analyzing deals, right? So I'm always kind of the buck stops at me on analyzing a property inside of our business, whether we're going to do it or not, because I'm that analytical guy, right? Spreadsheets make me happy, so I love doing that. But other stuff like like marketing, like ugh. It's awful, right? So I handed all that stuff out. Basically the only marketing that we do is turnkey marketing, like set it and forget it. Like here's $15,000 a month, market, and just let the leads come in, like stuff like that. And operating the CRM and making sure the CRM is working great. Like that's horrendous, right? So I let somebody else on my team do that. So, do what you love and figure out a way to hire out everything else.
I love that. I love that. And the one thing actually we did not touch on is your past track record of raising money.
Okay.
And you just touched on that a little bit. So I don't know how well you kept track of this, but I know that you have at least been a part of deals of raising private money into the hundreds of millions of dollars, and the value of those deals is well into the billions.
Yeah.
Um, Talk us through some of that and what that shift has been like for you. Um, and what kind of advice can you give to maybe someone who hasn't raised money for billions of dollars of deals?
Yeah. So, it just comes down to really it comes down to two things, right? It's your willingness to not fail, right? If you are unwilling to fail, right, you can raise money, right? Because that means you have no other choice. You're either gonna have to raise money or you're not doing the deal, right? So your unwillingness to fail and your willingness to be okay with the two-letter word no. Right. I feel like everyone gets so scared that someone's going to think they're crazy and just tell them no. Right. And I always tell all of my students that I'm coaching is, and I'm sure Brooks, you've used this in the past for yourself, is you know find someone who has money that you potentially could pitch for raising private capital, and they're your friend, right? And call them and be like, "Hey, Steve, I got to pitch somebody to raise private money, but I need to practice on you, right? I need your help. I want to practice this, and you let me know if you would lend me money or not. Not saying you're going to lend me money. I want to know if like you think this is good or not, and pitch them, right? But practice pitch him. And at the end, if he doesn't want to lend you money, guess what? He's going to say, "Dude, it sounds great. Like I wish you good luck," right? And then no harm, no foul. Or maybe by the end, he's like, why do you need to pitch somebody else? Like I'm kind of interested in this dig that you got going on, right? So, things like that. Like there's always ways to 90-degree someone in a conversation in order to make it not feel like you're putting them on the spot and give them a yes or no, or you're on the spot like you're going to get crushed, or be on the mountaintop. So stupid little things like that, but raising private money is all about educating the other person about who you are and the story that's behind you, right? When we think about who are some of the best salespeople or who are some of the best marketers in the world, we always go back to Apple, right? And Steve Jobs never sold the phone, right? He never said, "Hey, look at how cool this thing is," right? He always sold the feeling of what it felt like to own an iPhone, right? And you're selling the feeling of what it's going to be like to invest your money with my team, right? And how good that makes you feel, how much you're helping me and my father-in-law and my wife and my puppy so she can eat and all those things, right? Like you're creating an emotion behind it. And I always, it's not about the 12% interest, right? It's about what their money is going to do and the effect it's going to have on you and your team. So those are kind of two or three of my biggest things that I would provide to an investor to push them on how to pitch for money.
I love that. And that pitch, the way you just described that pitch is timeless. You can take it a number of different ways at the end, just like you said. You can ask for specific feedback. You can ask them, "Hey, if we rewind the clock and you were sitting down with the idea of investing, what would your feedback have been? How could I have improved?" And I learned that back that pitch back in when I was in college, I sold knives for Cutco. They call it
Nice.
slinging blades, right?
Yeah, that was the
And
college hookup right there with
all the
Cutco.
time, dude, all the time. I mean, I tell you what, though, I made like 10 grand a summer. Like I was stoked, right? Um, and um, that was the one way they were like, just, they said, here, we'll teach you how to get leads or whatever. Well, leads were not leads, because even back in that day, we didn't have anyone lining up to buy kitchen knives. Like
Yeah,
there
no,
was no, they didn't have a marketing arm for um, like for social media ads or anything like that. It's one-on-one sales. And they basically just said, "Hey, pick the phone up and call all your parents' friends, all your family that's close, everybody that owns a house that you know. Pick your phone up and call them." And we ran through that same pitch, like, "Hey, I just need to practice this pitch.
yeah,
I'm practicing this job. I'm learning all these skills." And I tell you what, people can shit on Cutco and all that all they want. Say what you want, but it was a great builder for sales skills, communication skills, and just actually getting out of the house and at a very young age understanding how to get told no, and how to walk
yep,
out of that thing, how to walk out of that house with your head held high. I worked with a girl who she would only book those appointments. She had 3 appointments a day, and it was breakfast time, lunchtime, and dinner time. And what she would tell the client was, you tell me what you want to eat. I'll bring my knife set. And while I'm doing the presentation, we're just going to make a meal together. So, literally, every summer, she would only pick up, like every day, she would only pick up a few different things at the grocery store if they needed something. But most of the times, it was whatever the homeowner's favorite meal was. So she literally just got fed every day to make sales, selling knives. And I was like,
Genius.
"You're a genius. You're like,
that is pretty
you are a
genius.
genius." Yeah. So, so that was pretty cool. But yes, that pitch is timeless, and I hope more people go back and will listen to that.
Yeah,
So
one thing to
yeah,
add to that just super quickly, one thing that would probably like put me over the edge, um, you know, everybody, I think you kind of your circle of friends and the people that you surround yourself with and everything. I think you kind of you discount what they're looking for because a lot of friends don't sit around and talk about investments, right? That's not a thing, right? But I
right.
promise you, you have people inside of your network of friends that are looking for investments. And one of the craziest experiments that I did, and I still use it today, is when I started renovating properties, right, I needed to raise money. So I was like, I had this great idea. Like, I'm going to shoot a 3-minute video. And the 3-minute video was, what my business was, what each one of my family members did inside the business, and what a private money lender was, right? Like, those were the 5 pieces of the video. And it was probably like 3-4 minutes long. And I post that thing on social media. At that time, like Facebook was, the cool spot with all the cool kids. And I literally, with inside of an hour or 2 hours, I raised $1 million for my business. And it was just off a video that I shot sharing, you know, it was a family owned business, what each of us did as family members inside of that business, and how you could be a part of that family business and get a 12% return on your investment. It was pretty cool.
That's
That's
awesome.
genius.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be extensive. Like a lot of people, it's imposter syndrome in my mind.
yeah,
They think they've got to pitch this brand, this big, wild, beautiful pitch, because they're asking for $1 million and they've never had $1 million. Well, guess what? That's not the value that you bring, and that's not what people are looking for. Like you
yeah,
don't need to have made $1 million in order to pitch $1 million. Otherwise, there would be no real estate investing if those were the requirements, because
for sure.
you'd never leverage, right?
Yeah, and no one wrote me a check for $1 million. Like, I had friends coming, like, "Hey, I got 25 grand I can lend. I got 50 grand I can lend," right? And that all added up.
And that's the thing. Yep, that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. So, John, we talked a lot about where you were and where you're at now, kind of what your operation looks like. What is the next 1 to 5 years look like for you, specifically around your mission of helping people invest passively? What do the next few years look like?
Yeah, so there's probably two sides to that. One is, I'm going to continue to probably move away from doing retail, flips and wholesales and move more strictly into my passion of uh 100% focusing on rental property investing, right? And only buying properties because that's what they're going to be used for, is rental properties. And then on the side of, you know, how am I helping those people, or how helping people kind of see the light? I mean, we are in a very unique moment in time that only comes around every 10, 15, 20 years, and that's where we're starting to see a market shift, right? And I remember very specifically in 2008, 2009, where I was like, I was new to real estate at that point in time. I was 3, 4 years in, and I was taking the ride with the market, right? I wasn't smart enough to be like, all right, I got to be cash heavy and I got to be ready to buy, right? I was like everyone else, like a little scared, banks were folding, everything was going crazy. And I had this conversation with myself. I was like, you know what? The next time this happens, which I knew it would, uh, I'm going to be ready, and I'm going to take full advantage of everything that's going to take place when that does happen. And do I think, now, like this time around, it's going to be nearly as bad as it was 10, 15 years ago? Heck no. But I think we're going to have a unique opportunity that we haven't seen the last 5, 7, 10 years. And we're going to be able to buy a lot of really sexy investments. And I think it's the perfect time as a newer real estate investor who's been wanting to buy rental properties or create a change in their life and for their family's life for the future. Like, now's the time to do it. Like, I'm not even close to blowing smoke when you open up the tabloids every day and you see, all of these things that are going on, in the financial world and interest rates and everything. I mean, it just all makes sense. And I'm taking advantage of it, right? That's why I'm moving to Little Rock and like making these adjustments in my portfolio, because I believe so heavily in it. And I just want to take people for the ride with me, right? Like, hey, check this out. This is what we're doing, and the goal is that over the course of the next 10 years, we can make that effect on 100,000 people.
I
I
love that.
love it. I love it.
Yep.
And you're going big enough. You're going big enough to actually make a difference. And man, I can't tell you. I know the thousands of lives that you've already touched, and now you're in a very unique position to touch hundreds of thousands more. And I know you will not stop anywhere near the 100,000 mark. I'm sure that's gonna continue
Yeah.
to grow because
Hopefully
I know
not.
you. I know you don't do anything small. So that's incredible to see and hear. So thank you for sharing that. And for those of you at home, go ahead, Kate.
I just wanted to ask him, for a newer investor who would want to capitalize on the market now, what are a couple like actionable tips that you could give someone like that?
Good question.
Yeah. Great question. So I would say the top 3 or 4 things that you want to do is, most investors, whether it's real estate or the stock market or anything, they get very, they want to do a million things at once. Like, let's learn how to, short stocks and write options and, be buy and hold investors and all this stuff, right? What I would want everyone to do is just focus, right? Is figure out where's your lane and stick in that lane. And what I mean by that is, what state are you investing in? What city are you going to focus in? What neighborhoods in that city? And then what types of properties, right? So you don't have to listen to all the noise, right? I know I'm investing in Arkansas and Little Rock. I'm buying 1 to 4 family homes. Anything in these particular neighborhoods and anything else that anyone tries to share with me or give to me, like, I don't want to see it, right? That's all I'm looking at. So one is get focused on where and what you're buying, right? And then from there, it's just educate yourself, right? There's in the stock world, right? You can trade with fake money, right? And what I mean by that is, you can go out there and kind of put trades on the market and see with fake money, like how they do, right? You can do the
Mhm.
same thing with real estate, right? Go on to Zillow or Investor Lift or REI Network and like look for properties, analyze those properties, like do the entire process that you would normally do if you were actually going to buy the home, but just learn, right? Just educate yourself as much as possible on the market that you're investing in. And then third is get support, right? Like come and join a group like mine or another one on Facebook where you can see other investors that are actively doing it. And remember, guys, it's not about always blazing your own path. Sometimes you just got to copy what someone else did,
Mhm.
right? And see what those other investors are doing and just rinse and repeat, right? They own 100 rental properties for a reason. It's not because their process sucks, right? It's because they actually, put something together that works and just copy it over and over again, right? So get clear, practice, and learn from the people around you. Those are the biggest things that I would put out there for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
I love that. I love that because something I did in the first few years of my career, and I thank you for bringing this up because often I forget about this, is um, do that fake analysis, as I called it,
Yeah.
walk the property, and then I would do this for deals whether we decided to write an offer on them or not.
Yep.
Um, and then I'd walk the property, I'd do the whole analysis, and then I would say, okay, my purchase price is this, right? Maybe I got beat out. Maybe we decided not to write an offer for whatever reason, and then I'd watch it. Okay, what did it then sell at? How close was I? Then I would watch it and then I would go rewalk it after renovation and look at what did they flip? What did they touch?
Yeah.
Did we do the same renovations, right? Where was my scope of work compared to theirs? And then what did they relist at? What did they resell at? How did my ARV compare? And yes, it's a long game because some of those flips can take 6 months, right? And some investors take longer, some investors take shorter. That's fine, but that analysis is incredible. So thank you for bringing that back up because I think that's very valuable advice.
Yeah, and I
And
think it's also good to say, right? It's, as real estate investors, right? I feel like people say like we analyze a property, we write an offer, we buy the house, right? Like we've analyzed 500 houses to buy 10, right? So like,
right,
there's a lot of practice that goes into the one that we wind up buying.
yes, 100%. And if you're buying every house that you analyze, then you're going to be losing money. Or
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
and actually, there are sometimes I like to say or, but there's just no or about it in that scenario.
Yeah,
I mean, Zillow and Open Door were buying every house that they analyzed, and maybe they weren't even buying every house they analyzed, and they still got
yeah,
crushed in the last year and a half. I mean, they're losing like an average of 80 grand a house.
yep.
Um, I mean, you're still getting crushed. So, that's perfect. Now, can you whittle down and name a couple key mistakes that you would like to see newer investors avoid, or maybe how to avoid them? Let's say you're not super cash rich right now as a
Hmm.
new investor in this market. How can you still avoid some mistakes of getting over leveraged and get crazy while uh, getting some success in this changing market?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, with less money, you have to be more conservative whenever you're running numbers and doing deal analyzation. Now, in a market that was hot, right, that we just went through for the last 3 to 5 years, right, being conservative got you nothing, right? Because you had to be aggressive, you had to take shots, and with a hot market, you can stand to take some shots.
Yep.
But as a market cools, as we start to see inventory stack up, right? The good part is now it's a buyer's market, right? And I feel like people when they hear buyer's market, they get scared. Like the less people buy in a buyer's market, I'm like, it's called a buyer's market for a reason, guys.
Thank you.
We got to buy houses. Um, is and I know Brooks, you've heard of this all the time. It's set your numbers and don't move off of them. Right. And what I mean by that is you need to set some investing criteria for yourselves. Right. And the less money you have, the more conservative you need to have with those investing criteria. and never move off that criteria. The second you do is the second you put yourself in a position at risk, right? And but the good part is now that this market is getting, less tight and there's more inventory in 9 to 12 months, that really restrictive investment criteria is still going to allow you to buy properties, right? Which is a beautiful thing. So you can be conservative. You can not have a lot of money. You can want to take less risk, but still get inventory, still get properties, which is beautiful. I'll give you an example of what some of mine are. If I'm going to buy, renovate, and refinance a property, so I'm going to do the BRRRR strategy on a property. I want to have a cap rate of a minimum of 12%, right? I go into every purchase knowing that I'm going to own the house for at least 15 years. So does that neighborhood, does that area support that long-term investment? Number two is I know this property has to cash flow from day one, meaning if the only play on this is appreciation, I'm not buying it, right? I have to see positive cash flow that's going to support the debt on those properties. So those are just kind of like three quick things. And if my property doesn't meet any of those, I'm not buying it, right? No questions asked, right? So set the criteria, stick to them, don't waver.
It's very disciplined. I love that. And some may say boring, but boring in real estate
Very.
investing is good. It's good
Yes.
because when you get crazy and you try to get too creative and you try to get a little excitement back in your life because you're sick of analyzing 12 cap deals.
Yep.
Well, for anybody who's sick of analyzing 12 cap deals, just
Yeah.
send them to John, okay, or send them to us,
I'll take
and I
them.
promise you I'll take them in a second, okay? Um, but when you get bored of analyzing 12 cap deals, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, I need to go do this flip because I need to get, I need to get my hands dirty again or something like that. That, just like you said, that's exactly when things go wrong, and
Yep.
then you lose money. And then you're like, well, shit. Okay, back over here to my boring 12% cap. And now I got to go buy 5 rental properties just to make up the money that I lost. And get back to whole. So I love that.
Yeah. In the investing world, boring is fantastic.
Yes, it is. So for those of you listening, I want to again remind you to hop over to Facebook and get into John's Facebook group. It's a free Facebook group. He's dropping knowledge every single day in there. Rental Property Pros. And you can find the link in the show notes for that group. So, John, we're going to move now into the lightning round of questions. These are just some fun questions.
All right.
And so, just first thing that comes to mind for you, and then we'll go. All right. So, what is the craziest and legal thing you've ever done for cash?
Craziest and legal thing I've ever done for cash.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've definitely done a dumb dare. I've definitely run naked somewhere for cash before. So we'll leave it at
cash. All right.
Well, at least you got paid for it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do it, you might as well
Impressive.
get paid for it,
Yeah,
right?
that's impressive that you got paid for it.
John, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a surgeon.
Ooh.
Really?
Yeah, I spent my first 2 years in college as pre-med.
Nice.
Huh. I did not know that about you. I love it. All right. If you could sit on a bench and talk with someone for 1 hour, who would it be?
Warren Buffett.
Easy. No explanation needed there.
Easy.
If you could retire tomorrow, all financial things aside, what would you spend your time doing?
Travel the world in a heartbeat.
Flying a jet. Flying a jet. What is your ideal vacation in one sentence?
You guys ask hard questions on this show.
You just think about them in depth.
Yeah.
Too analytical.
I know. There you go. I would say
Well, you also live at the beach too. So like this
I
is a
know.
little
It's
I
hard.
mean,
It's
I
hard.
will I will say that like you live in paradise in San Diego, right north of Pacific Beach. So like I don't really know. I mean, every day is a freaking vacation for you.
Really is. So perfect vacation of my world would be just traveling to any place that I've never been to before.
I like it. I like it. And well, actually, we should remind everyone that your honeymoon was a 3-week African safari too.
It was,
So
yeah.
you're not short on adventure. I don't want the listeners to think like this guy just sits behind his spreadsheets all day. You're not short on adventure. All right, we have to put that in there.
He loves
I'm actually.
spreadsheets. That is a vacation for him.
Oh my god. Oh, okay. I've grown to learn spreadsheets, but like when John and Caden's husband Joe, when you guys talk about spreadsheets, I'm like, oh my God, kill me. Um, Joe created a spreadsheet for your honeymoon vacation
We don't need
spots.
to talk. We don't need to talk about that.
I love that. I
I
love
did the same thing for mine. So
that. See, it's
I don't
Adds
know
okay.
up.
why.
See, I was gonna say, see.
Why wouldn't you? How do you even know what to do if you don't have a spreadsheet?
Well, and it's the exact opposite for me, I guess, because my fiance has we've never eaten at a place in our entire time of dating. We never tried a new restaurant unless we read 10 Yelp reviews and found the place on Instagram. So like,
See?
I mean, it's a version of a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
We're just getting
You're
our data
analytical.
differently.
You just don't know it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. All right. I do want to ask you one more lightning round question. What is your favorite all-time real estate or business book?
Uh from an investing standpoint, I think if you're a new investor, it's long and it's brutal, but Tony Robbins' investing book is fantastic. I think it gives a lot of really basic and it makes investing not a headache, right? It doesn't make it impossible. I think most people don't invest because it's so scary, and he kind of makes it super simple. So if you're a newer investor, I would say that would be probably the way to go. But I mean, the coined answer is Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, that'll change your life if you've never if you've never read it and want to get into real estate investing. I mean, that's the game right there.
Love it.
Rednit. I love it.
Reading it.
Rednit. We're gonna need a sponsorship by Rich Dad Poor Dad by now
I know.
because
Oh my
Sure,
gosh.
everybody
every
says that.
single
Yeah.
every one, and I mean us too, honestly. So we could talk shit, but it's
Great book.
cliche. Yeah, great
Yeah.
book. Great book. Okay. Out of the lightning round now, the last question before we leave is if you lost everything except your knowledge, and in the next 30 days you had to find a deal, what would you do? Some advice for the newbies.
Absolutely. So if I had like nothing besides just a keyboard and the internet, technology has made this so stupid simple, guys. Right now, there are websites out there like Investor Lift and REI Network and all of these websites that now bring wholesalers from all over the country in one spot. And literally, with the flick of fingers and a thumb, you can find your next deal. One of my students literally bought 2 properties off there last week, and he's never bought any rental property in his entire life. So he's as newbie gets, right? And that's where I would go. I mean, all this technology that's available to us. I mean, there's really hardly any room for an excuse these days, because you don't have to walk the property, you don't have to kick the tires. Hire an inspector to walk through the house. Google hard money lenders. You'll have that property financed in 36 seconds. I mean, it's easy. It's easy living these days.
I love it. I love it.
Easy.
You
Yeah.
couldn't be more right. Yeah, easy
Yeah.
living is right.
Oh, and one other thing
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
wanted to give you guys. So I love putting this book out there just because I think it's one of those books that I read and changed my life as an entrepreneur. It's old. It's called A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Um, when it was written, if it was written today, it would be a person's search for meaning. So it can work with men or women. Viktor Frankl survived concentration camps in Germany, and he wrote this beautiful book about his experience and how the one thing that can make or break anything in life is your ability to make a decision. And it's the only thing that no one in the world can take away from you is your ability to make a decision. And as an entrepreneur, it is a game changer. And I would encourage everyone to read it. It's a beautiful book.
Thank you. I'm gonna look
Wow.
that up.
Yeah, I'm gonna go order it right now. I've not ever heard of that one. So thank you for
Ah,
the very unique
check it out.
suggestion.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, John, thank you very much for joining us today. And for those of you listening at home, thank you for joining us today. If you like this week's dose of the RE Junkies podcast, please subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a crazy real estate story or a great case study and you'd like to be featured on an upcoming episode, click the submission link in the show notes. Your story can be featured, but you can remain anonymous if you'd like. We'll catch you junkies next time on the only real estate podcast of its kind.